Covering Dunkirk, Fredonia, and all of northern Chautauqua County, this is WCVF 88.9 FM, The Voice.
And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Big Blue Sports Podcast here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. I am your host, Matt Volz, a junior here at SUNY Fredonia. A few things to talk about today. Going to start, of course, as always, talking about Fredonia sports. Then I'm going to get to the Major League Baseball playoffs. And we're only in the ALCS and NLCS, and my World Series prediction is already completely wrong. And then we're going to talk about the Sabres. They're back in action after a few nights off. They are in Pittsburgh for a 7 p.m. matchup with the Penguins tonight. And then finishing off talking about the Bills, a recap of their Monday night win over the New York Jets, a preview of Sunday's game back at home against the Tennessee Titans, and some news revolving around the Bills trade for wide receiver Amari Cooper that came out yesterday. First of all, for any loyal listeners of Big Blue, you may have missed me last week. We were on our fall break on Thursday and Friday of last week, but I was not able to be on the air on Wednesday, unfortunately, and the reason for that was because I came down with a lovely little case of laryngitis. I had absolutely no voice at the beginning of last week, and when you have no voice, kind of hard to do a radio show. So unfortunately, I was not able to be on Big Blue last week, and I greatly, greatly missed it. But I am very glad to be back here for everyone today. So first of all, for Fredonia Sports, cross country, it's a sport that I talk about a lot on this show. I've talked at great length about cross country because that is the sport that I have the most experience with. For anyone who may not be aware, I ran cross country for 6 years. I ran from 7th grade up until my senior year in high school. My dad has been a cross country coach for, I don't even know how. I think my dad's been a cross country coach for a good 17, 18 years, just about. And so it's a sport that's always been a part of my life, and it's a sport that I kind of feel sometimes doesn't get the attention or the love that I wish that it did. So the men's and women's cross-country teams were at home on Saturday, October 5th. They hosted what they described as the largest cross-country invitational that Fredonia has hosted in several years. They every year they host the Cara Hall Memorial Invitational, and Cara Hall was a Fredonia graduate. She ran cross-country and track for Fredonia, and after she graduated, she was killed when she was out for a run, and she was actually struck by a car while she was out for a run and killed. And so every year, Fredonia has run this invitational in her honor, and for a few years, the first few years that they did it, it would be the very beginning of the season, and there would only be about 2 or 3 other teams that would come to compete at this invitational. It was much bigger last year. I think they had about 8 teams that showed up last year, and this year they had, I don't know the exact number, but it was double digits, I'm pretty sure. So it was a big invitational. Fredonia, not only did Fredonia have their men's and women's team compete, but in the men's race, they actually had an alumni team compete as well. And Fredonia Radio Systems' very own Justin Malinowski competed in that race. I got to see him after the race. I was out there on the course. I think this race probably made my laryngitis about 30 times worse, because here's the thing with cross country is such a different sport. It's not what you would call a spectator sport. You know, you think about if you're going to your kid's soccer game or you're going to a football game, you know, you're going and sitting in bleachers and watching the game, or you might be bringing a lawn chair and watching the game. Cross country is very different because it is a course that there's a lot of twists and turns and winds and things like that. And so there's not ever really one good, at least at the fun courses, there's not really one good vantage point to stand from and just stand there and watch the race. So you're constantly running back and forth, you're cheering everybody on. And I gained a reputation on my high school cross-country team for being the loudest and most, I won't say most obnoxious, because I was backseat coaching every single one of my teammates, and I was known for being a very emphatic and a very loud cheerleader, essentially, on cross-country. And the same carried over to college. Actually, one of my former teammates from high school, he runs for Alfred, and he was competing at the meet. And I saw him after the race, and I said, Kev, did you hear me cheering you on as I was going down the hill? And he goes, I could hear you from the top of the hill as I was coming down. He said that he and everybody else in high school could always count on me cheering him on. And that's the neat thing about cross country, right, is that you have that atmosphere. But the men's team ran well for Fredonia. There were 17 teams total, 6th place finish for the men's team. Their 5 scorers all finished in the top 60 out of 184 finishers. So, again, a quick refresher on how cross country scoring works. You have your top 7 runners are the ones that are officially recognized for your team. The top 5 are the ones that score. And how it's structured is it's similar to golf in the sense that the lowest amount of points wins, okay? So if you finish in first place, that's 1 point. If you finish in second, that's 2 points, and so on and so forth. It gets interesting when you have teams that are incomplete. So a team that has less than 5 runners cannot score as a team. The individuals can still place, but like, for example, let's say you have your first place finisher is on a scoring team, so they get 1 point. Let's say your second place finisher is on an incomplete team, so points don't apply to that runner. And then your third place runner is on a scoring team. Your third place runner would then get 2 points. So the points are what position you are in regards to like how you finished in terms of just runners on scoring teams. And it's a little bit tricky to sort of get a hold of when you first get into it. But the 6th and 7th runners are what are called displacers. So their primary responsibility is to go and beat, the responsibility for a 6th place runner on one team is to go and beat the 5th place runner or the 4th place runner on another team. Because the 6th and 7th place runners, they don't get points. They just increase the number of points for opposing teams. So I was a displacer when I was in high school. So the Blue Devils finished 6th out of 17 teams. The women's team was 10th out of 13 teams. Their last meet of the regular season is coming up on Saturday. That will be hosted by Geneseo. And then another meet back here on Saturday, November 16th, the Regional Cross Country Championships for Division III will be hosted by Fredonia. So there's the last meet is October 19th. Then November 2nd is the SUNYAC Championship meet. The next step past that, which is the Regional Championship, will be hosted by Fredonia, and that's going to be huge for just the overall growth of the program. Speaking of athletic programs at Fredonia that are growing, the women's tennis team finished their season a 5-7 record, which doesn't necessarily jump off the page, but when you consider the fact that this is their best season that they've had since 2019 and more wins this year than the last few seasons combined, it's an improvement for head coach Jane Jens' team. They've won a few key matches last year. They had a long winless streak. They broke that, and they were able to pick up some key wins. So a nice season for the women's tennis team. They have a couple of matches that they also play in the spring, but their fall season has now come to an end. Volleyball is getting closer to their end. They are at home again on Saturday. They'll face Buff State. They've gotten some really solid contributions from some of their young players. Kylie O'Brien was a remarkable freshman for them last year, and she's continued her volleyball prowess so far as a sophomore. They've had a couple of really good freshmen as well for head coach Jeff Braun's team, and they've been able to like a lot of some of the games that they have. They might lose 3 sets to 1 or something like that. But a couple of those sets might be like 25-22 is the final score, where like you look in an individual set and if 2 points were different, they would have won. So they've had they sometimes struggle with falling behind too early in sets. Like, you fall behind like 8-2 in a set, it's really hard to come back. And so I think they've struggled with that. They struggled last year a lot with like other teams going on runs. Like it would be like a set would be like tied at 10, and then the other team would get like 6 or 7 points in a row, and then they wouldn't be able to recover from it. So that's been cleaned up a little bit more this year. They've definitely been better. A 9-13 overall record. And again, they are at home against Buff State on Saturday at 1 p.m., and I'll be on the call for that one. I'll be doing PA for that, so come see the game in Dodds Hall Gym. The men's soccer team is on the road. Their game just started about 15 minutes ago. They are on the road against Cortland, looking to snap a 3-game losing streak. They come into play today with a 6-7-2 record, trying to really get themselves back into the mid to upper class of the SUNYAC. And the women's soccer team also taking on Cortland today. That one is at home, and again, just started about 15 minutes ago. They are hosting Cortland, trying to stay above 500. They come into play today at 7-6 on the season, and they have been really finding ways to put the ball in the back of the net. I mean, Katie Sellers is third in the SUNYAC in goals with 8. She's their senior forward. She was their leading scorer last year as well. Maddie Payne, their senior midfielder, leads the SUNYAC in assists with 9. And Gabby Irwin is tied with a player from Cortland with 7, tied for second. And not only that, but Abby Simkowiak, the goalkeeper, is third in the SUNYAC in saves. She's got the 4th best save percentage. In terms of total points, Gabby Irwin is third with 19. Irwin is also second in shots with 51 in the SUNYAC. And Abby Simkowiak has the 3rd best goals against average in the entire conference. So this is a team this is the best women's soccer season that they've had in a few years, and they've been finding ways to put the ball in the back of the net, and Abby Simkowiak has been very solid in net. So it'll be interesting to see sort of where this team goes as they get closer to the SUNYACs. The swim and dive season has started. They were at home. Both the men's and women's teams were at home last Saturday against Pitt Bradford. The women's team put on a show. They only lost 3 events, came away with a 95-61 victory, while the men's team suffered a close loss by the final score of 91-81. Both of those teams are on the road on Saturday against Hobart and William Smith College. Again, Hobart is the college for the men's teams, and William Smith is the college for the women's teams. And believe me, starting out as a freshman who was not familiar with Division III sports a couple years ago, that was so confusing to me. I was like, wait, well, who are they playing? Are they playing Hobart or are they playing William Smith? No, it's the same one. It's just Hobart is the men's college and William Smith is the women's college. Not to mention basketball and hockey are getting closer to starting. It's hockey season actually starts this weekend. They are on the road. And then their first home game is next Saturday, October 26th, against Buff State. So it should be a lot of fun getting the hockey season ready to roll again. It's always a wonderful time. Again, Parker Gurnett and I with the play-by-play and color commentary for those games on WNYF. And it's a lot of fun. You know, Jeff Meredith's coming back for his 37th season. He told me a few weeks ago, or about a month ago or so, he told me that he feels like he's 40 years old again coaching this team. The Blue Devils have 17 freshmen on their roster, so it's a very, very young team. But the hope for them is that they will continue to grow and improve as a team and maybe put together some wins and have an excellent season for Fredonia State hockey. So I'm going to take a short break. When I come back, I'm going to talk about the Major League Baseball playoff picture, how a few teams have had their Cinderella runs come to an end, while others appear to be maybe just starting theirs. So thanks for tuning in this afternoon to Big Blue Sports Podcast here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia.
You started living with yourself for a while. You said you never suffer fools for a smile. But while you're living in the state of denial, don't lose hope, don't lose hope. You get an inch while they're taking a mile. You can't erase what we used to describe. Words carry weight, but they don't have a mind of their own, of their own. stage and who holds the room. Who cares if the matters the most? Who set the game and clearing the smoke? You started living with yourself for a while. You started feeling like a fish on the line. You got the tempo, but you don't get the time, and you won't. No, you won't. So pack up your suitcase, the round is trying to go before the sun goes down.
Hey, I'm Daniel Nunley. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, and you're listening to 88.9 WCVF The Voice.
It's gonna put a knee in the ground.
And welcome back to Big Blue Sports Podcast here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. Before we continue, the New York State Department of Civil Service will be on campus from 1 to 4 p.m. in the University Commons lobby on October 17th, that is tomorrow, or on Friday, October 18th, I should say, to discuss state employment and the NYS Helps program. Again, this will take place on Friday, October 18th, 1 to 4 p.m. in the University Commons lobby. So the Major League Baseball postseason is well underway. Game 3 of the NLCS between the LA Dodgers and the New York Mets is tonight on FS1. That game at I almost said Shea Stadium, at Citi Field in Queens. The Mets and Dodgers tied at 1 as the Dodgers dominated the Mets in Game 1, and the Mets stormed back and took Game 2. So the postseason picture so far. The NLCS, the Mets and Dodgers series tied a game apiece. The ALCS between the New York Yankees and the Cleveland Guardians. Yankees won Game 2 last night to take a 2-0 series lead. So a recap of the postseason so far, because it has been a little while. The last time I was on the air was Wednesday, October 2nd, which was during the wild card round. So we'll recap the rest of the playoffs. In the AL, the number 6 seed Detroit Tigers, seeming like a team of destiny. They took down the 3 seed Houston Astros in 2 games. They won Game 1 3-1 and Game 2 5-2. The other AL wild card series, the Kansas City Royals, the 5 seed, beating the 4 seed Baltimore Orioles in a 2-game sweep. Very low scoring series. The Royals took Game 1 1-0, and they took Game 2 by the final of 2-1. In the National League, the 6 seed New York Mets, who had a hard charge late in the season to make the postseason, they beat the Brewers in a 3-game series. The Mets took Game 1 8-4 in a wild game. The Brewers responded with a 5-3 win in Game 2 before the Mets took home a 4-2 win in Milwaukee in Game 3 to advance to the NLDS. And the other wild card series, the San Diego Padres defeating the Atlanta Braves in a 2-game sweep. The Padres shut out the Braves with a 4-0 win in Game 1 and a close Game 2, San Diego beating Atlanta 5-4. So the ALDS, the number 1 seed New York Yankees against the 5 seed Kansas City Royals. The Yankees took that series in 4 games over Bobby Witt Jr. and the Royals. A great series between the 2 seed Cleveland Guardians and the 6 seed Detroit Tigers. The Tigers, for anyone who listened 2 weeks ago, the Tigers were my pick to represent the American League in the World Series, and that did not happen. The Tigers were up 2-1 in this series before it was. The first 3 games were shutouts. The Guardians dominated with a 7-0 win in Game 1, and then Cleveland's offense went silent as Detroit won Games 2 and 3, both by the final score of 3-0. A close game in Game 4, the Guardians took it 5-4, and then Game 5, a grand slam off the bat of Lane Thomas, and the Guardians beat the Tigers 7-3 to advance to the ALCS for the first time since 2016. In the NLDS, so that sets up Guardians-Yankees. NLDS, the New York Mets against my World Series champion pick Philadelphia Phillies, and the Mets embarrass me. The New York Mets are on a roll right now. They beat the Phillies in 4 games, and a great series between the top seed Dodgers and the 5 seed San Diego Padres, and the Padres were up 2-1, and then their offense just went dead silent. The Dodgers took game 1 7-5. The Padres blew them out in game 2 10-2. San Diego won game 3 6-5 and had the Dodgers on the brink. The Dodgers destroyed the Padres 8-0 in game 4, and then a 2-0 win for LA in game 5. The NLCS so far, the Dodgers again with a 9-0 win over the Mets in game 1 before the Mets responded with a 7-3 win in game 2. Again, game 3 is tonight in New York City, 8:08 p.m. on FS1. And then the ALCS, the Yankees up 2-0 on the Cleveland Guardians, taking game 1 5-2 and game 2 6-3. Game 3 at Progressive Field in Cleveland is tomorrow at 5:08 p.m. Again, the NLCS on FS1 and Fox, the ALCS on TBS. So those series will continue. The World Series will begin. Game 1 of the World Series will be on Friday, October 25th. So my original prediction was Phillies versus Tigers in the World Series. I was hilariously wrong. So what are we looking at right now? In the ALCS, you've got the Yankees up 2-0 on Cleveland. And this is one where the Yankees, I don't trust the Yankees to be a team that's going to go very far and win the World Series. I really don't think the Yankees are going to win the World Series. I think, you know what, we're going to get crazy here on this episode of Big Blue Sports Podcast. I do think the Yankees will go to the World Series because losing a series when they're up 2-0, the Guardians have their work cut out for them. I will say it's happened before to the Yankees 20 years ago in the ALCS in 2004. The Yankees were up 3-0 on the Boston Red Sox, and the Red Sox came back and won that series in 7 games, and they ended up sweeping my St. Louis Cardinals in the World Series to win their first World Series in 86 years and break the famed Babe Ruth curse, the curse of the Bambino. And by the way, that's the only time in the history of Major League Baseball that a team has blown a 3-0 series lead and lost it. So, not to make the Yankees fans hurt, but the odds are in New York's favor right now in the ALCS. The fact that they're up 2-0. They're going to Cleveland. Really, for the Yankees, it's okay. If you split the 2 games in Cleveland, you're coming back home. Or the 3 games in Cleveland, I should say, because baseball is different. They do a 2-3-2 form. You've got 3 games in Cleveland, and then it's just, okay, you take 2 out of 3 and you're going to the World Series. Even if you lose 2 out of 3, like even if the Yankees lose 2 out of 3 games in Cleveland, they're still coming back home for games 6 and 7. All they got to do is just win one of them, and they're going to the World Series. The NLCS is a lot closer. It's interesting. The Mets winning game 2 was absolutely enormous. I think if the Dodgers went into Citi Field up 2-0, I don't know that the series would be going back to Dodger Stadium. So the fact that this series is even at 1, now it's a best of 5 series essentially. So I think that this is going to be a fascinating series. Personally, I don't trust the Dodgers I don't trust the Dodgers and I don't trust the Yankees in the playoffs. Really, all 4 of these teams are kind of known, at least in recent years, to come up short in the postseason. So I'm going to make a bold prediction. I think the Mets beat the Dodgers, and I think we get a Subway Series World Series. I think we get a Yankees versus Mets World Series. And call me crazy, I think the New York Mets win the World Series. I'm not trying to, it could go either way, but I think the Mets are a team. I mentioned it 2 weeks ago that in Major League Baseball, and in other sports too, but baseball is the one where you really see it the most. It is not always about the teams that are the best on paper. It is the teams that are playing at their best level. It is the teams that are that are red hot going into October. Those are the teams that go far and go on runs. We've seen that happen before. In 2021, We remember the San Francisco Giants won 107 games. The Dodgers won 106. Neither one of those teams got to the World Series. The Atlanta Braves got red hot, and they ended up winning the whole thing. The Phillies got to the World Series 2 years ago as a wild card team because they got red hot and made it there. Look what happened to the Arizona Diamondbacks snuck into the playoffs last year, went to the World Series, even though they ended up losing to the Rangers. I will say this. I do think a team from New York City wins the World Series this year. Whether it's the Yankees or whether it's the Mets, I think we see a Subway Series World Series this year. And the reason for that is that I think the Yankees have a big advantage over the Guardians right now, and I don't trust the Dodgers. Simply put, I just do not trust the LA Dodgers in the postseason like ever. So I would not be surprised if we saw a Subway Series World Series, and in fact, I think that's exactly what we're going to see. So I'm going to take a short break. When I come back, a little talk about the Sabres, their game tonight in Pittsburgh against the Penguins. J.J. Peterka should be back and good to go. So the Sabres looking to continue some forward momentum after their win over the Florida Panthers on Saturday. So thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports Podcast here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia.
Guess the party's almost over. Always hated counting sheep. You promised that you'd love me, at least until you fell asleep. I get lost in all the noises. I get lost most of the time, and I'm rarely asking why. I don't wanna come down. I'll forget it, you'll forget it, and that ain't gonna last just a minute till it's finished. Got me spinning, hold me tight. I'll forget it, you'll forget it, and that ain't gonna last just a minute till it's finished. Got me spinning, hold me tight. Almost died when you got closer. Stole a breath right from my love.
Tune in to News at Noon on Mondays and Wednesdays at noon, with an additional news segment on High Noon Friday, every Friday at noon. News at Noon gives you your local, campus, and international updates, as well as sports and weather. Be sure to tune in.
And welcome back to Big Blue Sports Podcast here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. So after the Sabres started 0-3 this year, it was a little bit concerning, right? They had the first two games that they played over in Prague against the New Jersey Devils, and it was rough, I mean, to say the least. And I think that there was kind of the notion that it was like, okay, you know, they had a rough game, a couple of rough games. They had some players go down. You know, J.J. Peterka was out. Zach Benson was banged up. And I think there was the thought that, all right, if you can get back home against the LA Kings in the home opener on North American ice where the Sabres had not lost in the entire preseason, there was the hope that, you know, maybe you get back on track. And then the Sabres, the home opener against the Kings was an incredibly frustrating game to watch, and those games happen all too frequently for the Sabres. That was a game that they do like there's a thing called the deserve to win -ometer, where like it shows it's a metric that basically examines a lot of advanced stats and says, okay, based on the X number of simulations that you can do with these stats in mind, who is most likely to win the game. And it's basically like it's a metric of who deserves to win this game the most. And the Sabres were at like 90% on the deserve to win, which basically means like if they play like that, they win 90% of the time. And they didn't. They only put one goal on the board. It is hard to win hockey games when you only score one goal. Because when you only score one goal, the only way you can win is if your goaltender is perfect and allows nothing. And that is not realistic to expect of goalies. The Sabres offense, I mean, their power play has not been good. It just hasn't. Like there's no nicer way to put it. The Sabres power play hasn't been anywhere close to good enough so far this year. And I think they know that. Now, on the flip side of that, I will say this. Buffalo's penalty kill has been remarkable. It has been awesome. The Sabres have had more offensive, I don't know if this is actually true, but it certainly feels like it. The Sabres have had more offensive chances on the penalty kill than they have on the power play. I mean, like, their power play is almost painful to watch them try and get into the offensive zone. Then they can't get anything set up. They're lucky to get a shot off. They eventually get one. It gets blocked. They clear the zone. Whereas their penalty kill has been so aggressive. Guys like Ryan McLeod, who's an excellent penalty killer. I love watching him play. Ryan McLeod can pick off passes, and, you know, he had a breakaway shorthanded that led to a penalty shot in the game against the Kings. He was stopped. Zach Benson had a goal that he did score, but the puck crossed the line like 0.2 seconds too late at the end of the period, so it was waved off. Alex Tuch scored a shorthanded goal, which was the Sabres' only goal of the entire game back on October 10th against the Kings. And a 3-1 loss where Anze Kopitar scored all three goals for LA. That's the type of game that is so frustrating because you play the way the Sabres played in that game, you usually come out with a win. Or at the very least, a point. And they didn't. They came away with nothing. But then again, that metric is to say that, okay, they had a lot of chances. They generated a lot of chances. That's great. Chances don't mean anything if you don't capitalize on any of them. And that was the Sabres' issue. They scored one goal in each of their first 3 games of the season. And then on Saturday against the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, that kind of turned a little bit. It looked like it was going to be same old early when Nate Schmidt scored midway through the first period to give Florida a 1-0 lead. Buffalo had been playing well in the first period, but they hadn't really been able to establish anything and, capitalize on their chances. Then a pass to the front of the net from Peyton Krebs, and Jordan Greenway scores his first goal of the year as the Sabres really try and unlock his potential late in the first period, and Buffalo ties the game. Just 41 seconds later, Tage Thompson with assists from Alex Tuck and Connor Clifton, who Clifton has been fantastic so far this season for the Sabres on their blue line. Tage scores his second goal of the year. The Sabres head into the locker room up 2-1, and it was a good crowd at KeyBank Center. It wasn't a sellout, but they had close to 17,000 of the 19,000 fan capacity there. So they had a pretty good turnout. In the second period, early on in the period with Buffalo pressing, they had a few good opportunities, and eventually Rasmus Dahlin feeds Henry Jokiharju for the one-time blast from the point, which Panthers goalie Spencer Knight never saw. Sabres up 3-1 just a minute and a half into the second period. They wouldn't score again until later in the period when Matthias Samuelsson, of all players, Matthias Samuelsson, who does not score goals ever, after a scramble in front, Samuelsson scores with assists from Jason Zucker and Ryan McLeod. Both of them get their first points as Sabres. Buffalo's up 4-1. Sam Bennett did score a power play goal, which I think was like one of the first power play goals Buffalo had allowed this year. Assist from Sam Reinhart and Evan Rodriguez, two former Sabres. 4-2 Buffalo after 2. The third period, Buffalo was mostly shutting down the Panthers. Alex Tuck scored an empty netter back-to-back games with a goal, and the Sabres beat the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers 5-2. It's their first win of the year. Sabres are 1-3. Florida drops to 1-2. They haven't played since then, but Buffalo is back in action tonight. They are on the road taking on the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Sabres have not played an actual away game in the in the U.S. or Canada. They had one away game, and that was one of the games against the New Jersey Devils in Prague. They were the designated away team for, and they lost that game. So the Sabres in Pittsburgh, as far as what to expect for this game, I mean, the Penguins are 2-2. Evgeny Malkin has 7 points. He has 6 assists in 4 games so far for the Penguins. I will say, I don't think this is the same Penguins team that we've seen in the past before. I really don't. I don't know that this is the same Penguins team that we have seen, and the Sabres are going to be getting some health back. So Zach Benson has been banged up. He is expected to go. Lindy Ruff did announce earlier today that J.J. Peterka is expected to play tonight, or he is going to be available to play tonight. Nick Aube-Kubel still out until the beginning of November with an injury he sustained over in Prague. So the Sabres, hopefully, going and, making something happen tonight in Pittsburgh against the Penguins, trying to get to 2-3 on the season as Buffalo tries to continue some forward momentum from the weekend. We're going to take a short break. When I come back, I want to talk about a recap of last week's NFL games, the Bills against the Jets, talk about the Amari Cooper trade, and what to expect for Bills-Titans Sunday at 1 p.m. So thanks for tuning in this afternoon to Big Blue Sports Podcast here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia.
call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. At the tone, please record your message.
Hey, I'm just calling to let you know that you're listening to WCVF 88.9 The Voice.
And welcome back to Big Blue Sports Podcast here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. So the Bills made a major splash yesterday, and it was honestly a much-needed splash to their wide receiver room as the Bills went out and made a trade with the Cleveland Browns to acquire Amari Cooper, a 5-time Pro Bowler and former 4th overall draft pick from the Cleveland Browns. The Bills trading a 3rd-round pick in this year's draft and a 7th-round pick in 2026 to the Browns in exchange for Cooper and a 2025 6th-round pick. It's a good trade for Buffalo for a lot of reasons. Number one, the Bills have not had a true number one go-to receiving option since Stephon Diggs was traded to the Houston Texans in the offseason. So that's part of it. Number two, in the offseason, the Browns converted most of Amari Cooper's salary to a signing bonus. So, in terms of salary, he was only owed it was below $1 million. He's only owed like $800,000 for the rest of the season. So it's a bargain for a Buffalo team that is kind of cap-strapped a little bit right now. And while, yes, there are some downsides to it, Amari Cooper is 30 years old. He leads the NFL in drops. He's dropped 9 passes so far this year. But the thing with Amari Cooper is that he provides that stability, provides that veteran presence in the locker room, a true number one option for Josh Allen, and that's, I think, what this Bills offense needs. They've tried to go with the mantra of, everybody eats and all this sort of stuff, but that's just not always... That's not always... there's still something to be said for having a true go-to number one target. And I don't know that Buffalo has had that. Now, Khalil Shakir is good. Dalton Kincaid, when he's on his game, can be. They're trying to work Keon Coleman up to that point. But none of those guys are like true number one threat type of receivers. And that's what the Bills are hoping for. That's what they're hoping for with Amari Cooper. So the Bills, Monday night against the Jets, finishing up a 3-game road trip, all against tough AFC defenses. They had lost back-to-back, of course, got embarrassed on Sunday Night Football by the Baltimore Ravens 2 weeks ago. And then the week after that, a close loss to the Texans in Houston, losing on a last-second field goal. So the Bills really needed to win this game to take control, take charge in the AFC East, a division that is struggling, of course, as the Dolphins are still without Tua Tagovailoa. The Jets have had their struggles, and the Patriots are the Patriots in the modern-day NFL. So a recap of the Bills-Jets Monday night game. Full disclosure, I missed the majority of this game. I was in a couple of different meetings on Monday night, and I got home with about 4 or 5 minutes left in the third quarter. I got home just as the Jets tied the game with about 6 minutes left in the third quarter, and then I watched the rest of the way. So the Jets started it off with a field goal on their opening drive, a 34-yard Greg Zuerlein field goal. The Bills responded with a 9-play, 70-yard drive capped off by a Josh Allen 1-yard touchdown run. Buffalo up 7-3. Jets come down the field and respond with a 9-play, 70-yard drive of their own. Aaron Rodgers with a 5-yard touchdown pass to Garrett Wilson. Jets up 10-7 at the end of the first quarter. In the second quarter, the Bills cover 90 yards in 10 plays, capped off by a Josh Allen 8-yard touchdown pass to Matt Collins. Just under 7 minutes left in the first half. Bills lead it 13-10. Buffalo then drives down the field in the next drive. They ran the ball really well. Ray Davis, with James Cook out, Ray Davis had a brilliant game, nearly 100 yards on the ground and over 50 receiving. So the Bills drive down, 21 seconds left in the half. Josh Allen, a 12-yard touchdown pass to Dawson Knox. The Bills are up 20-10, but the two words that Aaron Rodgers has somehow mastered in his NFL career, and the Bills, if you can think back to 2020 when they couldn't figure out how to defend, the Hail Mary. So the Jets with the ball near midfield. Aaron Rodgers airs it out. Somehow his former Green Bay Packers teammate Alan Lazard comes down with it. Touchdown Jets. The Bills still lead it, though, 20-17 at the half. That was it for touchdowns on the entire night. In the third quarter, the Jets come down the field on their first drive of the third quarter. Greg Zuerlein ties the game with a 22-yard field goal. Both Zuerlein and Tyler Bass were just seeing who could miss the most kicks. Like, for example, on the Matt Collins touchdown, Bass had missed the extra point. He also missed a field goal at another point. Greg Zuerlein hit the upright twice in this game. Just a very ugly, ugly game for kickers. And then in the fourth quarter, the Bills driving down the field, not able to get in the end zone after an 11-play, 64-yard drive. Tyler Bass with a chip shot, 22-yard field goal to put the Jets on top 23-20. And then on the Jets' final drive, an Aaron Rodgers pass intended for Mike Williams was horribly underthrown, and Taron Johnson, in his first game back from injury, comes diving in with the game-saving interception. The Bills are back in the win column with a 23-20 win over the New York Jets. They improved to 4-2 on the season. 4 of Buffalo's 6 games so far this year have been on the road. They will be back at home on Sunday for a 1 p.m. matchup with the Tennessee Titans. The Jets dropped to 2-4, and of course both teams going out yesterday and making significant deals. The Jets trading a third-round pick to the Las Vegas Raiders in exchange for Aaron Rodgers' old buddy Devontae Adams, and the Bills sending a third-round pick to the Browns for Amari Cooper. So we'll see how the new acquisitions do next week as we go into next week's games. It is now time for Matt's Picks of the Week. So the Thursday night game, 8:15 on Amazon Prime Video, the New Orleans Saints hosting the Denver Broncos. Truth be told, there's a good chance I don't watch this game. I don't think this is going to be too entertaining of a game. The Saints, I would imagine, will have Spencer Rattler out there. So a battle of 2 rookie quarterbacks between Spencer Rattler and Bo Nix. I like the Saints because they're at home, and I think Alvin Kamara can run the ball very effectively. We do have another London game at 9:30 Sunday morning. The Jacksonville Jaguars against the New England Patriots, both teams at 1-5. That game on NFL Network. This is not going to be a very pretty game. I am going to pick Jacksonville to take home the win, though. The Sunday 1 o'clock window of games, an NFC battle as the Seattle Seahawks head to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. According to ESPN, 82% of voters picking the Falcons. I will also pick Atlanta to win this game as well. We'll skip the Bills game for now and get back to it at the end. An AFC North battle as the Bengals go into Cleveland to take on the Cleveland Browns. The Bengals at 2-4. They desperately need a win. That Browns defense is good, so I think this is a close game. I will pick the Bengals to take the win, though. An interesting game as the Houston Texans go to Lambeau Field to take on Jordan Love and the Packers. The Texans 5-1, Green Bay 4-2. I do think the Texans are the better team. However, I'm going to pick Green Bay to get the win. That Lambeau Field home field advantage, I think, is going to be a lot for the Texans. I think the Packers come away with a win in what should be a good game. The Miami Dolphins, still without Tua Tagovailoa, heading to Indianapolis to take on the Colts. The Colts might have Joe Flacco. I'm going to take Indianapolis in that one. The Detroit Lions, without Aiden Hutchinson, who suffered a broken leg last week, heading to Minnesota to take on the 5-0 Vikings. I think this is where the Vikings' undefeated season ends. The Lions get the win to go to 5-1. NFC East battle as the Philadelphia Eagles take on the New York Giants. I think this is going to be a mess of a game, but the Eagles get the win. The 4 o'clock games, the Raiders heading to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. Raiders in their first game without Devontae Adams. I think the Rams get the win. The Carolina Panthers heading to Washington to take on the 4-2 Commanders. I think Washington gets the win. Jaden Daniels plays very well. 4:25, a Super Bowl rematch between the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. The Chiefs looking to start 6-0. The 49ers trying to get now back to above 500. I'm going to pick the 49ers to win this game. I think the revenge factor really does something for them, and I think they go out and get the win. Sunday Night Football, the Jets heading into Pittsburgh to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the Jets get the win in a very close game. Monday Night Football, there's 2 games. The Ravens in Tampa Bay against the Bucs. That's going to be a great one. I think Baltimore gets the win. No, I think Tampa Bay gets the win. And then the Chargers and Cardinals at 9 p.m. That one could go either way. I'm going to pick Arizona to get the win in that game. Titans-Bills Sunday at 1 o'clock as I got to finish things out here. I think this is an easily winnable game for Buffalo. I'm not going to say that it's easy necessarily for the Bills because no game is ever really easy, but I do think that the Bills are going to be able to come out on top. No word on whether or not James Cook is going to play, but I do think that Buffalo gets the win to go to 5-2 as they head to a lighter part of their schedule. That'll do it for today's show. Thanks for tuning in this afternoon. All Things Considered by NPR is next. You're listening to WCVF.